Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is Stacy, and we're going to do a podcast for all of you called The Antidote. And this was her idea.
It was? So the antidote to what?
Well, you said you wanted to do something to help people understand what spiritual nonsense is going on out there and what's real and what isn't. And I thought the antidote to people getting the wrong idea would be to help them get the right idea.
That sounds great. And it's because I have had this spiritual journey over the last 10 years. So I've been in a lot of different circumstances where people are trying to learn about spirituality. And I've noticed that there are a lot of sort of gimmicky type things out there where it's, give us 3 weeks and we will help you manifest the things of your desire as if that's a spiritual practice. And so,
Well, it's a spiritual great idea, and I love that the world is waking up and things that used to be just cautiously approached in very subtle ways are now everywhere, right in your face, all kinds of quotes, incredible personal growth. But these are the opening lines of the play. They're not all three acts. So it's pretty exciting that people are interested in growing their abilities and learning about a spiritual journey, if you want to call self-development that.
yes,
But it's not an easy three-step trick and then you're the guru.
exactly. So I've heard you say that people want to be the teacher and the guru before they are the disciple. And that's something that I see a lot. Um, that people just kind of want to jump to the end before they begin. And so that's why, or one of the reasons why I thought that we needed an antidote to that. We needed someone who is a spiritual teacher who has been doing this for most of your life as your work and as your own personal development journey path, let's say path, um, to talk about what an antidote would look like for the people who think that spirituality is just a weekend class about fairies or about what what the chakras are, which may be fine, but that's not the end of it. So
It's actually a wonderful thing that so many people are sharing all these different things that are possible ways that people can work on themselves.
mhm,
But it is a very long step-by-step journey to actually developing what people consider spiritual power. And I mean by that, the ability to use your energy and use your intuition to help others and change situations.
okay, so spiritual power is to be able to help others, essentially, is used to be able to help others.
I think in the best of all possibilities, one's spiritual development leads a person to want to share and be of help to others. So I don't like that people think that in 3 easy tricks they can create the whole outcome,
Mhm.
but I love that people are enthusiastic and excited
Yes.
about spiritual learning. And that gives people like us who are actually teachers and mentors, and you're a medium as well, and I'm also, we get a chance to take people who are already interested and help them antidote the fairy tale version of the work, show
Yes.
them the real step-by-step things that can help them,
Mm.
but also antidote the discouragement, because when people get a 3 trick podcast and they think, okay, this is how I'm going to get to the goals in my life, and then they can't do it.
Yes.
I feel really that the antidote has to address the discouragement that comes when you don't really have the tools and the patience to develop.
Agreed. And I also feel like the antidote that I'm looking for anyway is to this idea, this general idea that spirituality is woo-woo, which, whoa, woo, do I hate that word? Woo, do I hate that word? Um, and sort of like this light, airy fairy thing. And you also have mentioned before that it also isn't always this sort of deep intellectual kind of thing that is inaccessible or that is only accessible to a certain few.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you would like to see us create an antidote to all of the indoctrinated views on what it means to be spiritual. Being all woo-woo, airy-fairy, talking to the angels, and that stuff is one extreme. And the other is people not liking it if someone's down to earth, uses words that are not necessarily all that polite, says it like it is. I mean, people who are really blunt and direct, like myself, are sometimes not understood to be really spiritual teachers. So
Yes.
the kind of prejudices on both extremes, being against the woo-woo or being against the ass kicker. I mean, really, what is the definition of a spiritual teacher, and how does a person really learn the things they want to learn?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Why don't you tell them about your journey? Because in 10 years, you've accomplished a huge amount.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yes. Well, my path led me right to your door. I had always been sort of interested in spiritual subjects, but they were sort of tangential to my life. I was doing other things with in my life, and but something I knew was changing. And I had received guidance that things were changing, that I did end up listening to, because there were certain times in my life where I received guidance that I would not listen to. And I would then get into lots of trouble.
Whoops, yeah. Yeah,
And then,
that's the crash course.
thank you. Yes, the crash course. And then I couldn't ignore certain things, certain messages that I was receiving. And some might say by happenstance, or there is no happenstance, I did find you.
Well, the traditional viewpoint on that is that when a student is ready, the teacher appears. I feel when a teacher is ready, the student appears. And I was at the point where I met you, I had decided to only teach people who were willing to share what they learned with others, not people who were self-important and just wanting to be able to do psychic surgery or talk to the dead or some nonsense. I wanted to only teach certain level of people, and then you arrive. So when the student is ready, a teacher appears. When the teacher is ready, the blessing of the right students appear.
Well, thank you. When I met you, I was, in a very different place than I am right now, clearly. And the one thing that I think that was hindering my development as a person, or spiritual development, was a lot of internal resistance and stuff that I had been carrying around with me for a very, very long time. And when I met you, I had actually said this to somebody else. They said to me, "What are you looking for?" And my first response was peace. I'm looking for peace inside of myself. And so the the path since the time before I met you, when I met you, and up till today, has been a very wonderful, and complicated and deep path of learning how to make peace in myself, with myself, and actually create that for others.
It's helpful to be able to create the environment in which you want to exist.
Yeah.
But until you really know what's going on inside and how to manage that, it's difficult. And people don't realize that they're learning spiritual tools and different techniques but the laboratory of our own being, our own self, is the most important starting point. And people who skip over that and try to live some identity that's more advanced than they really are get in trouble.
Yes, and I see a lot of that in different spiritual circles and classes that I've been to and sat through and even taught. So that is part of what I wanted the antidote to be, that you you are the laboratory. I think you said that. You are the lab, you are the spirit that is walking in the world. And
If you can't solve it here, you cannot really help others. And it goes the other way too. As you help others, like when I help couples solve their difficulties with each other, I can then recognize more things that I could solve better in my personal connections.
yes,
But there really has to be a starting point of referencing your own imperfection, your own lack of ability. So you gain some muscle within your own life to manage every single aspect of life, or else you're just spouting nonsense and cliche things to other people that don't have any substance because you haven't lived it.
yeah. And the other thing, as you were talking, I wanted to address with an antidote is an antidote to fear. Because I do find that when people are taking classes with, many other people, or when they start on a path of development, that they really have to bump up right against their own fears. Fears of the unknown. I've had fears of, not knowing, well, not knowing, not knowing is the biggest fear
So
sometimes.
there's the fear of not knowing. What about the fear of knowing?
It's also,
So the antidotes you're looking for and would like to share with people are, what do you do to antidote the fears that come up when you have to address things inside you or in your world that need resolving? So how do you work with the fear? And I added, and then how do you work with the fear of knowing things that maybe others around you don't yet know or are afraid to know?
yes.
Like, it's not easy to know things either.
Mhm. This is very true. It's also not easy to be in touch with that kind of power sometimes.
So the antidote that we're talking about here is really the antidote to thinking little short, little inspirational quotes or moments are going to give you the whole strategy of how to work with yourself. It's an ongoing and very individual process. Like the way I work with you is completely unique to you. And how do you identify what you need to work on? How do you work against the popular version of it, which is if it isn't fast, furious, and I can prove it in the outer world,
Yes.
it isn't really worth attention. The things that are really valuable take time. And luckily for all of you who are waking up at this point in time, it doesn't take as long for you as it did for me. I mean, what took me decades of hard meditation and training in every different modality in the world, at the quantum level, which is now possible, the new energies on the planet are making people's progress so much faster, but you still have to be able to integrate things and understand how to live it. And that's what a coach or a teacher helps people do. So maybe a teacher is the antidote to a lot of confusion.
I think so. Because I also get the sense that there is this, it could be a cultural thing too, especially here in the United States. It could be cultural that we feel like we have to do things on our own. And I think that, and as I've seen in my own experience, that really we can't do anything on our own. I feel that healing is something that needs witness, that needs help, really.
I think that the ancient traditions understood that the tribe was responsible for the individual's development.
Hmm.
That's why for a long time I did 3 workshops every month for 30 years. So everybody would be together, 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 and then working with me individually as needed.
Right.
I stopped doing that a while ago because I felt like people were getting lots of different opportunities to learn different things, and I thought that was good. But the problem is they're not really learning how to make it their own and take it into every aspect of life. So I was willing to agree to do a teaching with you because Stacy's just as powerful as a coach and teacher at this point. You have earned your stripes. You have survived 10 years of hard work.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of knowledge to share. Some of the same things that I teach and also other things. So I think that we want to be the antidote to people not knowing what to do to progress,
Yes.
the antidote to certain types of identities being the acceptable. Like a lot of people think I'm rough around the edges, so they would never imagine that I could teach spiritual work, personal development. I don't even like calling it spiritual because I think everyone's on a spiritual journey and everybody's got different lessons to learn.
Yes.
But we want to be the antidote to things being superficial and really a lot of nonsense that's confusing people when there's such an open curiosity. Like
Yeah.
it's everywhere, all these quotes, all these ideas, all these things that people are commenting on. I love that. But
Yeah.
that's just a good start.
It is a great start. And the other thing too that I've noticed is sometimes when people embark on whatever a spiritual journey means to them, they also feel that they can just sort of do whatever and behave in certain ways that I mean, I've seen people behave in outrageous ways.
They don't realize that every part of their life is actually part of the spiritual. It's like all on the game board. You can't just like develop certain psychic skills and act like a complete con artist in the rest of your life. It all counts. That's hard for people to accept
Why is that hard for people to accept?
because it's hard and people want it easy and they want to look good. And let me tell you something, most people on a spiritual journey that's real look like shit sometimes, myself included. Sometimes you're just lost.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah. Very lost.
So let's antidote the idea that it all has to look slick and good because sometimes it looks great and sometimes you don't know what the next step is. And it's really, it's complete propaganda to think you should always know
Yeah, I think
what you're creating. Sometimes what gets created is not what you thought you were creating.
100%.
And the evidence is in what is creating. So teaching people to accept themselves
Mhm.
and learn from experience and from whatever teacher or tradition they decide to study, apply it not just as their practice here, but in every aspect of life. I can't live one way in my spiritual practice and be disrespectful or unloving to my husband or to my students. I have to live congruently, and that's not in a quote.
No, that can't be in a quote.
It could be mentioned in a quote.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting what you're saying is that it's the way that you are living and breathing in, and behaving in the world. And so I do feel that people think it has to be something that's compartmentalized. Like, this is what I do spiritually, this is what I do at work, this is what I do at home. And if I've learned anything, it's that really you can't, what you were just saying is you really can't compartmentalize it because how you develop will impact every area of your life.
Hopefully. And that's how we'll change the world. The antidote to the hostility and competition and disrespect out there is if we hold ourselves accountable. Very often you'll say to me, I feel myself judging or I see myself being, angry about something. And I say, good to see it. It's really good you see it. A lot of people walk around like, I'm fucking perfect. I don't judge anybody because I'm above that. Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Getting real clear with yourself. And then if you're judging something, take a look at why that's striking such a difficult chord inside. Like these feelings aren't wrong. It's what we do with it.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you said before, I really like what you said about, a lot of times you won't know what the next step is. And I feel like we've been taught that we always have to know, that we always have to be so sure about what outcome is going to devolve from something that we're doing.
And the problem with that,
Hmm.
in expecting that we have to know the outcome, is that when that fails, which it always does, people lose heart and then they're afraid to try anything, to believe that anything can work. It's fascinating working with teenagers
Yeah.
because the ones who are in the most trouble are the ones with the most potential, who feel like they cannot possibly make anything work. But they learn that from the adults around them who are discouraged. So I want to antidote discouragement and shortcuts and being afraid of your own feelings. The antidote to that is self-respect, knowing that everything you feel and everything you observe in life is a part of your particular path.
And that path, would you say, is part of the spiritual path? So living your life is a spiritual path.
It's all you. It's all you. I trained in all these many, many, many modalities from every country of the world and all the Western psychological techniques and medical stuff and chiropractic. And I found the essence of the things I wanted to teach weren't very different in any of them.
Mm.
But the thing is that for me, my path requires that I keep stretching and changing. Because if I'm not willing to change, how dare I tell you to change? So thank God I was introduced to ballroom dance, and I cannot possibly even begin to tell you how much I have to stretch and have faith that there is going to be a good outcome. Like everything's difficult.
Yeah.
And I love that I found that, because I can tell anybody that the antidote to um, kind of spiritual egotism
Yeah.
is the humbleness of not knowing if you can do the next step.
Mm.
And nothing has taught me that more than dancing ballroom, because I really don't know if I can do it. And that has given me such an ability to help people antidote their own fears by saying, look, anything's possible. You take it a step at a time.
Yeah, well, that's right. You have to take things a step at a time. I think that people sort of try to get ahead of everything. And so therefore they not make that much progress if they're trying to get ahead of everything and not just taking it as it comes.
I noticed that Stacy's in a lot of different medium circles, and she's often trying lots of different things, which I really encourage all my students to do. I think it's great. And she'll come back so annoyed because there's this guy and he's doing this. And I'm like, just be happy you know better.
Yeah.
Try to influence a change without being aggressive, and see if you can encourage a more respectful way. You're so lucky you know. And the antidote to people doing these crazy things that they think are fine to do in circles or in businesses or in marriages or in every part of life, the antidote to a lack of personal discipline and respect is to be taught properly. So we are available to be the antidote, and we wanted to open up this conversation by talking a little bit about the ways we each learned about our gifts. And for me, I was really lucky because I began learning about my gifts when I was 4, because I was extremely psychic, and thankfully a friend of my grandfather's caught me answering people's thoughts. and explained to me that you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to show respect and pray for them. You don't talk about the things that somebody hasn't said to you. Very helpful. I think about that every time I'm sitting with someone for the first time. You'll never see me answering a question that wasn't asked.
Yes.
And it's really amazing to me. I mean, it took me 50 years to learn what you've been able to learn very, very quickly because it's a very different time.
Yeah.
I'm hoping everybody listening knows that the antidote to not knowing is to get information and to get help and to get questions answered. So feel free to text or post your questions, and we will try and create antidotes to the confusion
Yeah.
or the lack of follow through, because a lot of people have a great idea or concept of what they want to do or create, but they just can't find the way to it.
Well, the other thing too is I think with sort of the classes that are, the find spirituality quick kind of classes, is there's a lack of support actually that people need when they're going through this kind of development, development
I
in general.
agree, and I think support is so needed. That's why I just started the women's circle, which I'm having women send me quotes, all these quotes I'm talking about. Send me the quotes, and we're using a quote each week on Monday nights to open a conversation, sharing people's wisdom and questions.
Yeah.
And that's just beginning to recreate a tribe of people, because I really feel the tribe is essential, and one-on-one contact with either a teacher or a trusted person in your community can help you develop and answer the promptings of your heart. If people can't support you when you say, I feel this, I wonder this, I dream this, if you don't get support, it's hard to go forward.
It is hard, and I do think that people tend to cut themselves off from developing because they might receive some inspiration or have an experience, and maybe they've shared it with somebody who's then said, oh no, that's you didn't do that, or that's not real. So they start to question themselves. And so right. So I just wanted to say, whereas Sarah was introduced to her gifts at such a young and tender age and has sort of lived with them for a long time in her life, I wasn't aware. I might have had gifts, but I was not aware of them. They started to kind of peak out around 1999, and I immediately just kiboshed it. I actually went into a very deep depression. I think
That's not unusual. It's very scary to know that you're not like others.
Yeah.
And it's so important to acknowledge that gift or ability, but not separate yourself, to find the connectedness to others, allowing for there to be a difference. It's tricky.
Yeah, it was. And so tamp that down, but if something is there, it's going to want to express. So eventually it did. And I was at a point in my life, and sort of a point, now culturally, where it's more acceptable, right? So, and that people are developing very quickly.
If I may tell on you a little bit, when I met Stacy, she was a lawyer and was adamant about wanting to be out of that. And I said, I think you need to bring your abilities to what you learned in law and what you learned in music before that, like pull it all together, because the same structure that exists in the law exists in spiritual law, and both are very important. And she just said to me, like, what are you talking about? It's one or the other. I love how life has helped you bring it all together.
Yeah, well, I've also learned that it's not just one or the other, it's both and.
And my cat agrees. Hi, Bear. He says, and you love animals too, so you're good.
And I do.
So should there be any further questions, you can address them to Bear. And please feel free to suggest topics to share, and Bear will help you come to a new awareness. we look forward to getting to know you. Write questions, comments, and suggested topics. And we will see you again to create an antidote to the poisons of the world that is in a chaotic refurbishing. It's like redecorating its entire, the mansion is being kind of redone at this point. So
And
we
reoriented.
can do it any way we want to. So let's really create an antidote to there being any fixed way it has to go. We can create a better world. And so I said, let's do it.
Right on.